They thought she was an easy target, until the doctor took her revenge. The rain fell softly over downtown Chicago, painting the city in shades of gray. Inside St. Mary's Medical Center, one of the most respected hospitals in the state, doctors and nurses hurried through the hallways while ambulances arrived one after another. For everyone else, it was just another busy Monday morning. But for Dr. Amelia Carter, it was the day that would change her life forever. At 29 years old, Amelia had achieved what many people only dreamed of. She had graduated at the top of her class from medical school, completed one of the toughest surgical residency programs in the country, and had just accepted a position as an attending trauma surgeon at St. Mary's. As she stood outside the hospital entrance, she took a deep breath and looked up at the massive glass building. "Dad, I finally made it," she whispered those words under her breath. Her father had passed away 3 years earlier after battling cancer. Before he died, he held her hand and gave her one final piece of advice. Never let power change who you are. Your skills will save lives, but your character will define your legacy. She had carried those words with her every single day. Walking through the front doors, Amelia smiled politely at everyone she passed. The receptionist greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Dr. Carter. Welcome to St. Mary's." "Thank you," Amelia replied with a smile. Minutes later, she was introduced to the trauma surgery department. Most of the staff welcomed her. Some even congratulated her on graduating with honors. But not everyone looked happy. 3 people stood quietly near the back of the room. Dr. Victor Hayes, head of trauma surgery. Brilliant, powerful, respected, and feared. Standing beside him were Dr. Eric Collins and Dr. Samantha Reed, 2 surgeons who had worked under Victor for years. Victor looked Amelia up and down before forcing a smile. "So, you're the young surgeon everyone's talking about. I'll do my best to earn that reputation," Amelia answered confidently. Victor chuckled. "Confidence is good." He paused. "But confidence doesn't save lives." The room fell silent. Amelia simply smiled. "I guess we'll find out." Several nurses exchanged surprised looks. No one usually spoke to Victor that way. Over the next few weeks, Amelia proved herself again and again. She worked longer hours than anyone else. She treated every patient with kindness. She stayed late to comfort frightened families. Even when exhausted, she never complained. Patients began requesting her by name. Hospital reviews mentioning Dr. Amelia Carter started appearing online. The hospital administration noticed. So did Victor. Every compliment Amelia received felt like a personal insult to him. One afternoon, a 12-year-old boy arrived after a terrible car accident. His condition was critical. Victor examined him briefly. "The chances are too low." He was ready to give up, but Amelia wasn't. "There's still time." Victor looked irritated. "You think you know better than me? I think he deserves a chance." Without waiting for permission, Amelia assembled a surgical team. The operation lasted nearly 6 hours. Every minute pushed the limits of modern medicine. Finally, the boy's heartbeat stabilized. He survived. The entire hospital celebrated the miracle. News spread quickly. The new trauma surgeon saved a child everyone thought was going to die. Reporters even contacted the hospital asking for interviews. Victor smiled in public, but behind closed doors, his anger grew. That evening, Amelia stayed late finishing patient reports. The hospital hallways were almost empty. As she walked toward the parking garage, she noticed footsteps behind her. Slow, heavy, getting closer. She turned around. It was Victor. He smiled, but there was something unsettling in his eyes. "You know," he said quietly, "doctors who become famous too quickly." He stepped closer. "Usually don't stay here very long." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. She looked him directly in the eyes. "Is that a warning?" Victor smiled again. "No, it's advice." He walked away, leaving Amelia standing alone in the dimly lit hallway. She had no idea that this was only the beginning. The hospital she had dreamed of working in was hiding secrets far darker than she could imagine. Perfect target. The next morning, Dr. Amelia Carter arrived at St. Mary's Medical Center earlier than usual. Victor's words from the previous night kept replaying in her mind. Doctors who become famous too quickly usually don't stay here very long. She tried to convince herself that it was just an arrogant senior surgeon trying to intimidate a newcomer. But deep down, something didn't feel right. By 8 o'clock, the trauma department was already overflowing with patients. Nurses rushed through the hallways. Stretchers rolled past every few seconds. Emergency pages echoed through the hospital. Amelia threw herself into work. She refused to let fear distract her. For the next several hours, everything seemed normal. Until lunch. As she entered the doctor's lounge, the room suddenly became quiet. A few doctors stopped talking. Others looked away. Then she noticed Dr. Eric Collins, smiling at his phone. "Have you seen today's hospital newsletter?" he asked loudly. Amelia shook her head. Eric turned the screen toward everyone. Someone had posted an anonymous joke. Some surgeons graduate with talent, others graduate with perfect grades because professors feel sorry for them. Everyone knew exactly who it was about. A few people laughed. Most stayed silent. Amelia simply picked up her coffee and walked out. She refused to give them the reaction they wanted. Over the next week, the small attacks became more frequent. Important patient files disappeared from her desk. Her surgery schedule was mysteriously changed without notice. Equipment she requested never arrived. Someone even canceled one of her operations without telling her. Each mistake made her look careless. Each problem damaged her reputation. But Amelia noticed something strange. Every incident happened only when Victor, Eric, or Samantha were nearby. It couldn't be a coincidence. One evening, Nurse Lisa quietly approached Amelia. "Can I tell you something?" Amelia smiled. "Of course." Lisa looked around to make sure no one was listening. "You're not the first." "What do you mean?" "There have been 3 women surgeons before you. They all left." "Why?" Lisa hesitated. "They complained about Victor." Amelia frowned. "What happened to them?" "One resigned. One transferred to another hospital. The last one," Lisa's voice became softer, "lost her medical license after someone accused her of falsifying patient records." Amelia's stomach tightened. Was she guilty? Lisa slowly shook her head. No. But nobody could prove she was innocent. That night, Amelia couldn't sleep. She searched old hospital records online. She found almost nothing. It was as if those doctors had never worked there. Every article had disappeared. Every interview had been deleted. Someone had erased their history. The following Friday, Amelia successfully completed another difficult surgery. The patient's family hugged her with tears in their eyes. "Thank you for saving our daughter." Hospital staff applauded. Even the chief executive officer congratulated her. Victor watched from across the hallway. His face remained expressionless, but his clenched fists told another story. Later that evening, Amelia returned to her office. The lights were off. She reached for the switch. Click! Her office lit up. Everything looked normal. Until she noticed her desk. Every patient file, every notebook, every certificate had been thrown onto the floor. Someone had gone through everything. Her laptop was open. Drawers were empty. Nothing had been stolen. Whoever did this wanted to send a message. Amelia slowly picked up a small photograph of herself and her father. The frame was cracked. On the back of the photo, someone had written 3 words with a black marker. "Leave while you can." For the first time since arriving at St. Mary's, Amelia realized this wasn't workplace jealousy. Someone was trying to scare her. But instead of fear, she felt determination. She took out her phone. She photographed the entire office, the broken frame, the message, every detail. Then she quietly whispered, "If you think this will make me quit, you have no idea who you're dealing with." That night, Amelia made a decision. She would stop reacting. She would start watching. Because the people trying to destroy her had made one mistake. They underestimated her. And from that moment on, she began collecting evidence. She didn't know how long it would take, but one day, the truth would come out. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos at St. Mary's Medical Center. Ambulances lined up outside the emergency entrance. Doctors rushed from one trauma case to another. To everyone else, it was another ordinary day. But for Dr. Amelia Carter, everything had changed. She no longer walked through the hospital as an innocent new surgeon. Now, she was watching, listening, remembering every detail, every strange conversation, every suspicious glance, every unexplained mistake. Instead of confronting anyone, Amelia acted as though nothing had happened. She smiled. She worked hard. She thanked her coworkers. She even remained polite to Dr. Victor Hayes. Victor seemed pleased. He believed his intimidation was working. What he didn't know was that Amelia had already started documenting everything. Every missing file, every schedule change, every threatening message. She kept a private journal at home and stored digital copies in a secure cloud account. If anything happened to her, the evidence wouldn't disappear. A few days later, an emergency trauma case arrived. A wealthy businessman had been critically injured in a helicopter crash. The hospital administration immediately became involved. Victor personally took charge of the case. Amelia was assigned to assist. As they prepared for surgery, Amelia noticed something unusual. Victor ordered a nurse to use a medical implant that had already expired. She looked at the package twice. The expiration date had passed 3 months earlier. "Dr. Hayes," Amelia said quietly, "this implant is expired." Victor didn't even look at her. "It's fine. It could put the patient at risk." Victor finally turned toward her. His voice became cold. "I've been doing this for 30 years. Are you questioning my judgment?" The operating room fell silent. Amelia knew arguing further could delay the surgery. She stayed quiet, but she secretly memorized the product number. After the operation, she visited the hospital supply room. The same type of implant was fully stocked. None of them were expired. So why had Victor insisted on using the old one? It didn't make sense. Unless someone was cutting costs or hiding something much bigger. That evening, Amelia met Nurse Lisa in the hospital cafeteria. Lisa looked nervous. "You were right to question him." Amelia leaned closer. "What do you know?" Lisa hesitated. Then she whispered, "Expired equipment has been showing up for months. My supervisor told us never to mention it." "Who gave that order?" Lisa looked around before answering. "The administration. And Victor." Amelia felt her heart race. This isn't just bullying anymore. This could hurt patients. Lisa nodded. "I know. But people who ask too many questions don't stay here." The next morning, Amelia arrived early and visited the hospital archives. She requested purchasing records for surgical equipment. The records clerk frowned. "I'm sorry, doctor. Those files were removed yesterday." "Removed? By whom?" The clerk checked the computer. I can't see the authorization. Someone deleted the record." Amelia thanked him and walked away. Now she was certain. Someone inside the hospital was erasing evidence. That afternoon, she received an anonymous text message. "Stop digging." A second message appeared seconds later. "You won't like what happens next." Amelia stared at the screen. Then she smiled, because anonymous threats meant only one thing. Whoever was behind them was afraid. That evening, as she left the hospital, she noticed a small security camera overlooking the surgical supply hallway. An idea crossed her mind. If the purchasing records were gone, maybe the cameras had captured who removed them. The next morning, she requested the security footage from hospital security. The officer checked the system. "I'm sorry, doctor. The footage from that hallway was deleted." "Deleted?" "Yes. Only administrators can authorize that." Amelia thanked him and left. She had just received something more valuable than the footage itself. Proof that someone was covering their tracks. Late that night, Amelia sat alone in her apartment. On one side of the table were photographs, threatening messages, notes, names, dates. On the other side was a blank notebook. She opened it and wrote one sentence across the first page. "Every lie leaves a trail. I just have to find it." Outside, thunder echoed across the city. Inside St. Mary's, powerful people believed they controlled everything. They had money, influence, connections, but they had overlooked one thing. Dr. Amelia Carter wasn't looking for revenge out of anger. She was fighting for the truth, and the truth was finally beginning to fight back. The following week, St. Mary's Medical Center was preparing for one of its biggest events of the year. The hospital's board of directors was coming to inspect the trauma department, along with several wealthy donors and members of the press. For Dr. Victor Hayes, it was the perfect opportunity to strengthen his reputation. For Dr. Amelia Carter, it would become the beginning of a nightmare. 3 days before the inspection, Amelia was called into Victor's office. He sat behind his desk, calmly reading a patient's file. Without looking up, he said, "Dr. Carter, the board has been very impressed with your recent surgeries." "Thank you." Victor finally looked at her. So I'd like you to perform the demonstration surgery during the inspection. Amelia was surprised. It was a huge opportunity. I'd be honored. Victor smiled. I knew you'd say yes. For the first time since she had arrived, Victor seemed friendly. Too friendly. The next 2 days were unusually quiet. No missing files. No rude comments. No strange incidents. Everything seemed almost perfect. But Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Victor wasn't the type of man who suddenly changed. He was planning something. She just didn't know what. The morning of the inspection arrived. The operating room was spotless. The patient, a middle-aged woman suffering from internal bleeding after a car accident, had already been anesthetized. The board members watched through the observation window. Reporters stood nearby, ready to cover the successful operation. Victor addressed the room. Today, Dr. Amelia Carter will demonstrate the future of trauma surgery at St. Mary's. The operation began. Everything went smoothly for the first 30 minutes. Amelia worked with incredible focus. The bleeding was under control. The patient's vital signs were stable. Then suddenly, the heart monitor screamed, beep, beep, beep. Blood pressure dropped. Oxygen levels crashed. The room exploded into chaos. What happened? Amelia shouted. A nurse checked the medication. Her face turned pale. Doctor, the patient received the wrong dosage. Amelia froze. That's impossible. She had personally reviewed every medication before surgery. Victor stepped forward immediately. What have you done, Dr. Carter? I didn't order that dosage. But your signature is on the chart. A nurse handed Amelia the paperwork. There it was. Her name. Her signature. Approving the medication. But she had never signed it. Someone had forged her signature. The patient survived after nearly 40 minutes of emergency intervention. But the damage had already been done. The board canceled the press conference. Hospital administrators demanded an immediate investigation. By that afternoon, rumors had spread throughout the hospital. The new surgeon almost killed a patient. People whispered whenever Amelia walked past. Some nurses avoided eye contact. Others looked at her with pity. Victor looked deeply disappointed, exactly as he wanted. That evening, Amelia sat alone in her office. She stared at the forged document. Something about it looked strange. She compared it with one of her real signatures. At first glance, they looked identical. But then she noticed one tiny difference. Whenever Amelia signed her name, she always made a small loop on the letter A. The signature on the medication form didn't have that loop. It was a nearly perfect copy. But it wasn't hers. Someone had spent time practicing her signature. Someone inside the hospital. Just as she was about to leave, there was a soft knock on her office door. It was Nurse Lisa. She looked terrified. I saw something. What is it? Amelia asked. Lisa closed the door behind her. The night before the surgery, I saw Dr. Eric Collins inside the medical records office. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was carrying your patient file. Amelia's heartbeat quickened. Are you sure? Lisa nodded. When he saw me, he quickly hid the file and told me to leave. Why didn't you report it? Lisa looked down. Because I'm afraid. They've ruined people's careers before. There was a long silence. Then Amelia gently placed a hand on Lisa's shoulder. You've already helped more than you know. Lisa whispered. Please be careful. They're not finished with you. After Lisa left, Amelia looked once more at the forged signature. The threats, the missing records, the deleted security footage, the expired medical equipment. Now, a forged medical document. This wasn't workplace harassment anymore. It was a criminal conspiracy, and someone was willing to risk a patient's life just to destroy hers. Amelia carefully placed the forged chart into a folder labeled Evidence. Then she looked out the window at the city lights. They think they've trapped me, she whispered. They have no idea. I'm about to trap them. The forged signature changed everything. Dr. Amelia Carter no longer believed she was dealing with a few jealous coworkers. This was organized, carefully planned, and whoever was behind it had done this before. The only question was, how many innocent people had already paid the price? The next morning, Amelia requested 3 days of personal leave. Victor looked surprised. So you're giving up? Amelia lowered her eyes and forced a weak smile. I think I need some time to think. Victor leaned back in his chair. I think that's a wise decision. As Amelia walked out of his office, she could almost feel his satisfaction. He believed she was broken. He believed she was about to resign. That was exactly what Amelia wanted him to think. Instead of going home, Amelia drove across the city to a small law office. On the door was a simple nameplate. Daniel Brooks, attorney at law. Daniel had once been a prosecutor before opening his own practice. He had built a reputation for exposing corruption in powerful institutions. After hearing Amelia's story, he remained silent for several moments. Finally, he spoke. If even half of this is true, you're not fighting a few bad doctors. You're fighting an entire system. Amelia nodded. I know. Daniel looked directly into her eyes. Then promise me one thing. Don't confront them until we have undeniable proof. People like this don't panic. They destroy evidence. And sometimes, they destroy people. Over the next few days, Daniel helped Amelia organize every piece of evidence. The threatening messages, the forged signature, photos of the vandalized office, the expired implant, the deleted security footage. Everything was placed into a timeline. One detail immediately stood out. Every suspicious event over the past 5 years had one common name attached to it. Dr. Victor Hayes. Daniel decided to dig deeper. Using public court records, he searched for lawsuits involving St. Mary's Medical Center. Most had been quietly settled, but one case caught his attention. 5 years earlier, a young surgeon named Dr. Emily Ross had sued the hospital. The lawsuit had disappeared almost overnight. The file was sealed. Daniel made a few phone calls. By evening, he had found Emily. She now lived nearly 200 miles away in a quiet coastal town. Amelia immediately drove there. Emily answered the door cautiously. When Amelia introduced herself as a surgeon from St. Mary's, Emily's face turned pale. I knew one day someone would come. Inside the house, Amelia noticed dozens of unopened medical textbooks stacked in a corner. Emily hadn't practiced medicine in years. I love being a surgeon, Emily said quietly. It was my dream. What happened? Emily looked down at her hands. Victor happened. She explained everything. Victor had repeatedly harassed her after she refused to falsify surgical reports. When she threatened to report him, someone planted fake evidence in her locker. She was accused of altering patient records. Her medical license was suspended. Her career ended. I lost everything, Emily whispered. My job, my fiancé, my reputation, and the people responsible. Went back to work the next morning. Tears filled Amelia's eyes. I'm so sorry. Emily looked at her. No, I'm sorry. I stayed silent. If I had kept fighting, maybe none of this would be happening to you. Before Amelia left, Emily opened an old storage box. Inside were folders, photographs, and a small flash drive. I kept these. I couldn't prove anything back then. But maybe you can. Amelia stared at the flash drive. What is on it? Emily answered softly. Conversations, emails, and one recording that Victor prayed no one would ever hear. Amelia's heart pounded. This wasn't just evidence. This could be the breakthrough she had been searching for. That night, Amelia and Daniel plugged the flash drive into a laptop. Several files appeared on the screen. Most were old emails. Then they noticed a file labeled, Private Meeting, Do Not Delete. Daniel clicked play. Static filled the speakers. Then, Victor's unmistakable voice echoed through the room. If anyone asks questions, make sure Dr. Ross takes the blame. Another voice replied nervously. What if she refuses? Victor laughed. Then we'll make sure no hospital hires her again. The recording ended. Silence filled the room. Daniel slowly closed the laptop. He looked at Amelia. This changes everything. Amelia didn't smile. She simply whispered. They destroyed her life. They're never going to do it again. For the first time, Victor Hayes wasn't hunting Amelia anymore. Amelia was hunting Victor. The recording changed everything. 4 weeks, Amelia had been collecting fragments of the truth. Now, she finally had proof that Dr. Victor Hayes had destroyed someone's career on purpose. But Daniel wasn't celebrating. Instead, he looked worried. He closed the laptop and turned toward Amelia. This recording is powerful, but it's still not enough. Amelia frowned. What do you mean? Daniel leaned forward. If we're going after Victor, the hospital board, and the administration. We need evidence that they're still committing crimes today. Otherwise, they'll claim they've changed. They'll say this is an old misunderstanding. Amelia sighed. So we're still missing something. Daniel nodded. We need someone on the inside. Back at St. Mary's Medical Center, Amelia returned to work after her 3-day leave. The atmosphere had changed. People whispered when she walked by. Some believed the rumors. Others simply stayed away. Victor welcomed her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I wasn't sure you'd come back. Amelia smiled politely. I don't quit that easily. Victor chuckled. I'm glad to hear that. But inside, he was already planning his next move. That afternoon, Amelia noticed someone watching her from the end of the hallway. It was Mark Lewis, a quiet technician from the hospital's IT department. He looked nervous. As Amelia passed by, he slipped a folded note into her hand without saying a word. She waited until she reached an empty stairwell before opening it. There was only one sentence. Meet me tonight. Parking garage level 3. Come alone. No signature. No explanation. At exactly 10 p.m., Amelia arrived at the nearly empty parking garage. Rain tapped against the concrete roof. Most of the lights were off. For a moment, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Then a voice came from the shadows. Dr. Carter! Mark stepped into the light. He looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. You came. You said it was important, Amelia replied. Mark looked around nervously before speaking. I know what Victor is doing. Amelia's heart skipped a beat. How? I'm the senior systems technician. I maintain the hospital servers. I've seen things I wasn't supposed to see. Mark explained that hospital administrators often asked him to delete surveillance footage, erase emails, modify digital records. At first, he believed it was routine maintenance. Then he realized the truth. They weren't fixing mistakes. They were hiding them. Amelia listened without interrupting. There are secret backups, Mark continued. The administration doesn't know they exist. What kind of backups? Security videos, deleted emails, electronic signatures, everything. Amelia could hardly believe what she was hearing. If those backups still exist. Mark nodded. Victor is finished. Just then, a loud car door slammed somewhere in the garage. Both of them froze. Headlights suddenly appeared at the far end of the parking level. Mark whispered, They found us. Go! The black SUV accelerated toward them. Amelia grabbed Mark's arm, and they ran between parked cars. The SUV swerved sharply, barely missing them. Its tires screeched across the concrete floor. Through there! Mark shouted. They raced toward the emergency stairwell. The SUV couldn't follow. The two of them burst through the heavy metal door and ran down several flights of stairs before finally stopping. Both were breathing heavily. Mark looked terrified. They've never chased anyone before. Amelia realized what that meant. Victor's group was no longer trying to scare her. They were desperate. The next evening, Mark secretly met Amelia and Daniel at Daniel's office. He carried a small encrypted external hard drive. This is everything I could save. Daniel carefully connected it to a secure computer. Thousands of files appeared. Security footage, financial reports, internal emails, deleted personnel records. One folder immediately caught Amelia's attention. Confidential settlements. Inside were dozens of hidden agreements. Doctors, nurses, former employees. Millions of dollars had been quietly paid to people who agreed never to speak publicly. Another folder contained purchase records showing that the hospital had knowingly bought expired medical supplies at discounted prices while billing insurance companies for brand new equipment. Daniel stared at the screen in disbelief. This isn't just harassment. This is fraud and patient endangerment. It could send half the administration to prison. As they continued searching, Mark suddenly stopped. His face turned pale. What is it? Amelia asked. Mark pointed to another folder. Its title was chilling. Project Phoenix. Inside was Amelia's employee profile, her photograph, performance reviews, copies of her signature, a detailed timeline of every accusation they planned to make against her. Even a draft termination letter, already signed, dated 2 weeks into the future. They had planned her downfall before she had even defended herself. Amelia slowly closed the folder. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she looked at Daniel. They were never trying to investigate me. Daniel nodded grimly. They were trying to erase you. Amelia's eyes filled with determination. Then it's time we make sure the whole world knows who they really are. The room fell silent. Amelia stared at the folder labeled Project Phoenix. Every page proved one terrifying fact. They hadn't been reacting to her success. They had planned to destroy her from the very beginning. Daniel slowly closed the laptop. We can't go to the police yet. Amelia looked at him in disbelief. Why not? Because if Victor realizes we have this evidence, he'll destroy whatever is left. And he'll disappear before anyone can stop him. So what do we do? Daniel leaned back in his chair. We let him think he's winning. The next morning, Amelia walked back into St. Mary's Medical Center as if nothing had changed. She greeted the nurses. She smiled at the reception staff. She even apologized to Victor for the mistakes during the demonstration surgery. Victor couldn't hide his satisfaction. I knew you were smart enough to admit when you were wrong. Amelia lowered her head. I just want another chance. Victor smiled. I'll see what I can do. As Amelia walked away, Victor turned to Eric and quietly said, I told you she'd break. Neither of them noticed the tiny recording device clipped inside Amelia's lab coat. Every word had been captured. Over the next few days, Amelia carefully played the role Victor expected. She stopped asking questions. She accepted extra shifts without complaining. She even acted nervous during meetings. Victor became careless. For the first time, he believed Amelia was no longer a threat. Meanwhile, Daniel and Mark worked day and night analyzing the files from the encrypted hard drive. The deeper they looked, the darker the truth became. They discovered fake billing records worth millions of dollars. Patient reports had been altered to hide surgical mistakes. Expired medical devices had been relabeled with new expiration dates. And every major decision had one approval signature. Dr. Victor Hayes. One afternoon, Amelia received an unexpected phone call. It was Sarah Bennett, an investigative journalist known for exposing corruption in powerful organizations. Daniel had contacted her days earlier. Sarah agreed to meet that evening. Inside a quiet coffee shop, Sarah listened carefully as Amelia explained everything. When Amelia finished, Sarah remained silent for several moments. Finally, she spoke. If this evidence is real, this could become the biggest medical corruption story in the country. Amelia nodded. It is real. Sarah looked directly into her eyes. Then I need one last thing. What? A confession. We need Victor saying something that proves he knows exactly what he's been doing. That night, Amelia couldn't stop thinking. A confession. It sounded impossible. Victor was too careful, too intelligent. He never admitted anything. Unless he believed he was speaking privately. 2 days later, Victor called Amelia into his office. He closed the door behind her. I've been watching you. Amelia stayed quiet. I misjudged you. You finally learned how things work around here. She forced a nervous smile. I'm just trying to survive. Victor walked toward the window. Good. Because people who fight the system, he paused, usually lose everything. Amelia took a slow breath. What happened to Dr. Emily Ross? For the first time, Victor's smile disappeared. There was a long silence. Then he laughed. So someone finally told you about Emily. He turned back toward Amelia. She made one mistake. She believed honesty mattered more than loyalty. What did you do to her? Victor shrugged. I didn't destroy her. She destroyed herself. All I did was make sure no one believed her. Amelia felt anger burning inside her. But she stayed calm. So if someone accused you today, Victor stepped closer. No one would. And if they did, they'd disappear just like everyone else. Hidden beneath Amelia's lab coat, the recorder captured every single word. That evening, Amelia met Daniel and Sarah. She placed the recorder on the table. Daniel pressed play. Victor's voice filled the room. I made sure no one believed her. Then, they disappeared just like everyone else. Sarah looked at Amelia with amazement. This is it. Daniel nodded. We finally have enough. Amelia smiled for the first time in weeks. The trap was complete. Victor still believed he was hunting his prey. He had no idea. He had just confessed to the very crimes that would destroy his career. The countdown had begun. And in just a few days, the entire truth would be revealed. 3 days later, St. Mary's Medical Center was preparing for its biggest fundraising gala of the year. Hospital executives, board members, wealthy donors, local politicians, and reporters from across the city filled the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. A live orchestra played softly in the background. Everyone was dressed in elegant suits and evening gowns. To the guests, it looked like a celebration of excellence. But behind the smiles, a storm was about to begin. Dr. Victor Hayes stood confidently near the stage, greeting guests and shaking hands. The hospital's CEO smiled proudly as reporters took photographs. Victor was convinced that his reputation had never been stronger. Across the room, Dr. Amelia Carter entered quietly. She wore a simple navy blue dress with a silver necklace. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. Daniel Brooks and investigative journalist Sarah Bennett arrived separately, blending into the crowd. Mark Lewis remained outside in a nearby vehicle, protecting encrypted copies of every piece of evidence in case anyone tried to seize the originals. Everything was in place. As the evening progressed, the CEO stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "thank you for supporting St. Mary's Medical Center. Tonight, we celebrate the people who dedicate their lives to saving others." The audience applauded. Then the CEO smiled toward Victor. "And this year's Excellence in Leadership Award goes to Dr. Victor Hayes." The room erupted in applause. Victor walked toward the stage with a confident smile. He accepted the award and stepped behind the microphone. "I've spent 30 years serving this hospital," he began. "My greatest honor has always been protecting our patients and mentoring the next generation of surgeons." Amelia looked at Daniel. Daniel gave a small nod. It was time. Just as Victor continued speaking, every screen in the ballroom suddenly went black. The orchestra stopped. Guests looked around in confusion. Victor frowned. "What is this?" Then, the hospital logo disappeared. A video began to play. The first image showed security footage of hospital staff secretly removing medical files late at night. The next clip displayed deleted purchasing records. Then came photographs of expired surgical implants. Whispers spread across the room. Victor's face slowly turned pale. "What is happening?" the CEO shouted. Nobody answered. The next video began. It showed emails ordering staff to delete surveillance footage. Another clip revealed forged medical documents. Then, the audio recording started. Victor's own voice echoed through the silent ballroom. "If anyone asks questions, make sure Dr. Ross takes the blame." A wave of shock swept through the audience. Some board members looked at each other in disbelief. Others immediately stood from their seats. Victor stepped toward the technician's booth. "Turn it off!" Nobody moved. Then the final recording played. Victor's voice filled the room once again. "I made sure no one believed her." Another pause. Then, they disappeared just like everyone else. The ballroom became completely silent. Every camera turned toward Victor. Every reporter raised a microphone. The applause that had filled the room only minutes earlier had been replaced by complete disbelief. Victor's breathing became heavier. He pointed directly at Amelia. "This is a lie. You edited those recordings." Amelia calmly walked toward the stage. For the first time since joining St. Mary's, she stood directly beside Victor. "I didn't edit anything. I simply told the truth." Victor tried to grab the microphone, but before he could speak, Sarah Bennett stepped forward. She held up a folder. "We've independently verified the recordings. We've also confirmed the financial records, deleted emails, and internal documents." She looked toward the reporters. "Every file has already been delivered to federal investigators and multiple news organizations." Victor froze. His expression changed. For the first time, he realized he couldn't stop what was happening. At that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. Several investigators from the state's healthcare fraud division entered, accompanied by uniformed officers. The lead investigator held up an official warrant. "Dr. Victor Hayes, you are under investigation for healthcare fraud, evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of conspiracy." Gasps filled the room. Victor looked around desperately. No one came to his defense. Not Eric, not Samantha, not even the CEO. Everyone stepped away from him. He had spent years making people fear him. Now, he was completely alone. As officers escorted Victor out of the ballroom, he turned toward Amelia one last time. "You think you've won?" Amelia met his eyes without anger. "No. I think the truth finally did." The doors closed behind him. The room remained silent. But Amelia knew one thing. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the final chapter. The ballroom remained silent long after Dr. Victor Hayes was escorted away. No one spoke. No one moved. The same people who had applauded him only minutes earlier now stared at the floor, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Outside, television news vans were already pulling into the hospital parking lot. Within an hour, the story was everywhere. Top trauma surgeon under criminal investigation. Whistleblower exposes corruption at St. Mary's Medical Center. Years of hospital secrets finally revealed. Across the country, millions of people were watching. The following morning, the hospital looked completely different. Reporters lined the sidewalks. Former employees began coming forward. Some had remained silent for years. Now they finally felt safe enough to speak. One by one, nurses, residents, technicians, former surgeons, all shared similar stories, missing records, threats, intimidation, cover-ups. What everyone had believed were isolated incidents turned out to be part of a much larger pattern. Inside the hospital, investigators searched every office. Boxes of files were carried out. Computers were seized. Servers were copied. No department was left untouched. Dr. Eric Collins was questioned for nearly 6 hours. By the end of the interview, he admitted that Victor had ordered him to alter medical records and forge signatures. Dr. Samantha Reed confessed that she had stayed silent because she feared losing her career. One confession led to another. The wall of lies that Victor had built over decades collapsed in just a few days. Meanwhile, Amelia stayed away from the cameras. She refused every television interview. When reporters asked if she felt victorious, she simply answered, "This was never about revenge. It was about protecting patients and telling the truth." Her words spread across social media within hours. People admired not only her courage, but also her humility. A week later, Amelia received a phone call from someone she never expected. "Hello, Dr. Carter." It was Dr. Emily Ross. Her voice trembled with emotion. "I watched everything. I saw Victor being arrested." There was a long pause. Then Emily quietly said, "For the first time in 5 years, I slept peacefully." Tears filled Amelia's eyes. "You deserved justice a long time ago." Emily smiled through her tears. "No, we deserved it." Days later, the state medical board officially cleared Amelia of all allegations. The forged documents were proven fake. Her professional record was fully restored. The hospital publicly apologized. The board of directors resigned. A new leadership team was appointed. St. Mary's promised sweeping reforms, including independent oversight, stronger protections for whistleblowers, and stricter patient safety policies. The institution had survived, but it would never be the same again. One afternoon, Amelia walked through the hospital lobby. Something caught her attention. The wall where Victor's portrait had hung for years was now empty. In its place was a simple plaque that read, "Integrity is the foundation of every life we save." Amelia stood there quietly. She smiled, not because Victor had fallen, but because the hospital finally had a chance to become what it was always supposed to be. As she turned to leave, Nurse Lisa caught up with her. "I almost forgot," Lisa said, handing Amelia a small envelope. "What is this?" "It was left at the front desk for you." There was no return address. Amelia opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. It read, "Some people wear white coats to hide the darkness inside them. You wore yours to bring light back into ours. Thank you." There was no signature. Amelia folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. For a moment, she looked around the busy hospital. Patients were smiling. Nurses were laughing. The atmosphere felt different. Hope had returned. But Amelia couldn't shake one thought. Victor Hayes hadn't acted alone. Someone higher up had protected him for years. And that person had never been identified. As Amelia looked out the hospital window, a black luxury sedan slowly pulled away from across the street. Inside, an unknown man lowered a newspaper featuring Victor's arrest. He looked at Amelia from a distance. Then he made a phone call. "We have a problem," he said quietly. "She knows too much." The line went dead. Amelia never saw the car. She had no idea. The most dangerous enemy was still out there. 3 weeks had passed since Victor Hayes' arrest. The investigation into St. Mary's Medical Center continued to dominate national headlines. Federal investigators uncovered years of fraud, cover-ups, and patient safety violations. More than 20 hospital employees had been questioned. Several senior administrators resigned. Others faced criminal charges. For the first time in decades, the truth was finally winning. Dr. Amelia Carter returned to what she loved most: saving lives. She refused promotions. She declined television interviews. She even turned down offers to write a book. People called her a hero. She never accepted the title. "I'm just a doctor," she would always say. One rainy evening, Amelia finished a 14-hour shift. As she walked toward the parking garage, she noticed an elderly man sitting alone in the hospital chapel. He seemed lost. His hands trembled. Amelia quietly sat beside him. "Are you waiting for someone?" The man nodded. "My granddaughter. She's having surgery tonight." Amelia smiled gently. "She has wonderful doctors taking care of her." The old man looked at her carefully. "I know. One of them is you." Amelia looked surprised. The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a young nurse standing beside a smiling doctor. "My wife worked here 30 years ago," he said. "She believed this hospital was built on honesty." He looked around the quiet chapel. "For a while, I thought that hospital had disappeared." He smiled warmly. "But you brought it back." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. She thanked him quietly before returning to work. Sometimes, the greatest reward wasn't recognition. It was knowing you had restored someone's faith. A month later, the courtroom was packed. Victor Hayes stood before the judge. His expensive suits were gone. His confidence had disappeared. One by one, witnesses testified. Dr. Emily Ross, Nurse Lisa, Mark Lewis, former patients, former employees. Finally, Amelia took the witness stand. Victor looked at her with the same cold stare he had worn for years. But this time, it had no power. The prosecutor asked one simple question. "Dr. Carter, why didn't you quit?" Amelia took a deep breath, then answered, "Because if I had walked away, someone else would have become the next victim." The courtroom fell silent. After weeks of testimony, the judge delivered the verdict. Victor Hayes was found guilty on multiple counts of healthcare fraud, evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and endangering patients. He was sentenced to years in federal prison and permanently lost his medical license. Several accomplices also received prison sentences or were barred from practicing medicine. Justice had finally caught up with them. 6 months later, St. Mary's Medical Center held a small ceremony. Nothing extravagant. No television cameras. No politicians. Just doctors, nurses, patients, and hospital staff. The hospital unveiled a new program dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and improving patient safety. It was named the Carter Integrity Initiative. When Amelia was invited to speak, she stepped to the podium. She looked at the crowd for a moment before saying, "Revenge doesn't heal people. Justice does. The strongest person isn't the one who destroys others. It's the one who refuses to become like them." The audience rose to their feet, not because she had defeated Victor, but because she had reminded them what medicine was truly about. That evening, Amelia visited her father's grave. She placed a single white lily beside the headstone. The wind moved gently through the trees. She smiled. "We did it, Dad. We kept our promise." As she walked away, the setting sun bathed the cemetery in golden light. For the first time in a long time, her heart felt peaceful. She hadn't won because she took revenge. She won because she chose courage over fear, truth over silence, and justice over hatred. The end.